Hey everyone, I wanted to update you on the photo shoot. So, if you remember last week, I said that May 10th was the 250th anniversary of Ethan Allen's capture of Fort Ticonderoga. To celebrate the event, the reenactment, the vignette, happened at 9 p.m. Now, 9 p.m. is not great when you're trying to take photographs without flash. Obviously, you couldn't have flash photography. There were approximately 250 people there. You can just imagine the chaos if there was all those flashes going off. But think of the people doing the event trying to actually go where you needed to go when you've got flashes going off in your face and now you can't see. It wasn't completely dark. It had a lot less lighting than I hoped it would have. What they did instead was over in one corner, there was a network crew there. And those network cameras need more light than other things. So they had a couple of lights on there casting out over the grounds. At a certain point, they had some really good lighting in place, which made the vignette area very bright. Now, if you're not familiar with the capture of the fort, the commander of the fort was in his barracks, which was on the second floor. So they went up the staircase to the second floor, and that's where they accosted him. Now, that was the vignette spot, right? The staircase with some of the colonials down below, as well as the commander coming out of his room and Ethan Allen ordering him to surrender the fort. But they had a really nice light there for a while that they turned off or moved so that it cast more of a light across the entire courtyard. Doing so cut down the lighting. How much? I was shooting at ISO 25006. I got some super noisy pictures out of it. It was not an easy event to see even outside of the camera. I used a 24 to 70 2.8 to shoot the event. Did end up even getting some motion blur because there was just no way I could keep everything where I would like it to be. I didn't want to go any higher on the ISO. I figured I was way high enough on the ISO at that point, 25,006. For anybody who used to shoot film and you go by ISO 1000 film, then they came out with 1600, but you started getting into infrared film at a certain point. So it was unusual to be going above 1000, and 25,006, very, very grainy because there just isn't enough light to come in to capture the scene completely. The pictures are enough to get the gist of what's going on. Now, from a post-processing perspective, I used Topaz Denoise AI. Reminder, I'm not sponsored by anybody. I like the tool. It did an okay job. I think if I were going to put these out for publication, I would probably go with a paint filter in Photoshop to make it look more like a painting, because as we know, paintings, especially of events from a distance, lose a lot of details, and that's what the noise does. It makes you lose a lot of details. Now, you understand very quickly how the human brain works, because I can look at one of these noisy photographs and recognize the person. When I have the AI go through and try to make it better, the person doesn't look quite as recognizable to me anymore because of all the smoothing and things that it did, that my mind was more capable with the noise of pulling out that pattern of the person's face than it was after the AI got done with it. But without being able to run it through something, there's no way I could have gotten any kind of cleanish image on. Now you might quibble with me even going through and cleaning them up. I know there's some people that really like the grain, that noise that's in there. And considering that these will probably be presented in a smaller format, most likely if they're used by the fort, it will be in some publication that is showing what the events were like, or to their donors to let them see what it is. That said, they're going to be much smaller than where I was working. I blew them up to what would have been a very, very, very large print. So personal preference of mine would have been if there had been more lighting. I understand if from a historical perspective they wanted it to kind of appear like it would have. But again, you'd have to know what the moon was like at the time, how much clouds were in the sky. It happened at 3 o'clock in the morning. You'd have to take in a bunch of factors like that to get it true from a historical standpoint. Not having that kind of data, I would think you would just lighten it up so that the entire event could be seen. Now, that's my personal preference as a photographer. As somebody experiencing the event, having them come out of darkness gives a much more realistic appraisal of what it would look like to the soldiers, right? When they had these Green Mountain Boys and other colonial or would-be colonial soldiers coming out of darkness to attack the fort, that even having as much light as we did would have been more than they possibly would have had that at 3 o'clock in the morning at the time of the event. But it allows you to see how disorienting it would have been with that darkness. So this is where what you would like as a photographer clashes with the event itself, right? It would be, I would love to have had enough light to take all the photographs and not have to worry about my ISO and worry about the graininess. But from a reenactment event, it had to be more like what was going on at the time, even if they couldn't get it to be an exact match. So I don't want anybody to think that I'm faulting them for the way it was put on. I'm just saying from a photography perspective, this was not the most ideal situation for taking photographs. But again, it's something you have to take into consideration when you go do an event. I had my software all ready to go because I knew I would have to use it. I knew my ISO would be high. It was much higher than I anticipated. I figured I'd be looking at maybe an 80th of a second at 1600, which I've been able to get away with in certain things, but I had movement. So once you get movement, then the shutter speed goes up. And once the shutter speed goes up, I can't go anywhere else with the f2.8. I can't go down. So the only other part of that triangle that I can use is ISO. So in order to try to cut down as much motion as I could, I needed to crank the ISO up. So 25,600 for ISO. And still my shutter speed was not high enough to completely prevent some motion blur. To get around that, I tried to wait until they stopped. Now, if you've ever shot a professional model, for example, they have a pattern that they can go through where they hit a pose for a moment or two and move to the next pose and take that. Then they stop again, and then they move, and then they stop. And as a photographer, you look for that pattern and you shoot when they stop. That's what I tried to do here. Look for the pattern of what was happening in the vignette and try to grab it when it was at a less motion spot. So when they were coming down the stairs toward me, I got very little blur because they were actually coming toward me. But when they gathered everybody up, put the prisoners in the center, there was very little movement. I could get a bunch of pictures there when they were aiming their rifles up to protect themselves, right? They've got them aimed so that anybody would not be able to shoot at them from a window from one of the barracks. That was also, they were in place. There wasn't any motion that I needed to worry about there. So I was trying to find those dead spots so that I could get a good picture with the low shutter speed that I had to use. If you haven't already, I recommend you go take a look at the video that was produced on the Fort Ticonderoga YouTube page. And you can see what the event looked like, and you can see what you may have done differently. Now, for perspective, I believe the entire thing, except for some drone footage, was shot from the exact opposite of the courtyard from where I was. I was over by the vignette, tried to get myself a nice open spot, not on the stands, right? Figured everybody be sitting down watching this thing, so I'll stay off to the side, and I will be able to move around. I won't have to worry about anything. Good thing I got there early, because I was soon surrounded by people. Not what I was expecting. I expected everybody to be on the bleachers and to have a pretty clear view, and I couldn't move. I was packed in all the way around. I could swivel a little bit, but that was about the extent of what I was going to be able to do for the night. I had people behind me. I had people to both sides of me, and directly in front of me was a drop-off. So there wasn't any place I could really go to do anything more than what I could get, which being near the vignette was great because I could get the vignette right there. But I couldn't float around as much as I wanted to, and I couldn't change my angles as much as I would have liked to. My thought was I would start out where I was because it had a straight shot to where they were coming down from one of the channels, and I could see both of the other two inlets where they were coming through, including the main one, the gate. And then I would swing over closer to the bleachers so that I could get a different angle on the vignette. Didn't come out that way. Luckily, I got situated in a good spot to begin with because there was no way I was going to move for the rest of the night. But again, this all comes down to planning. Making sure that you have all of the tools that you're going to need ready to go. So when you go and do an event, you have everything in place and everything set. That way, when you come back to do your post-processing, you'll have as little as post-processing as you need to, but you already have the tools in place to enable you to do that post-processing. And again, go over to the Fort Ticonderoga site, watch the video. You'll be able to see the entire action. Like I said, from the other perspective. So you'll be seeing the vignette more or less head on, where I was seeing it from the side, but it'll let you get an idea of what the conditions were like there. And then hearing what I had to do to shoot with the lighting and things the way they were, it'll give you a feel for what you need to do if you're going to shoot at night. And that's what I got for you guys this week. Talk to you all next week.